Good morning and welcome everyone. Friends, this particular United Lodge of Theosophists, located in Bethesda, meets at 11 a.m. every Sunday. The students of the philosophy get together for the promulgation of Master's philosophy. Each Sunday we discuss a particular topic presented by a student, and sometimes we have a roundtable discussion of a topic. On the first and third Sundays, we're studying the Ocean, written by Mr. Judge. As we're aware, the 19th century impulse by the masters of this philosophy, which was needed very badly in the West, came through HPB and Mr. Judge, and their original statements sent to us through the masters is recorded in Isis Unveiled, Secret Doctrine, the Ocean, the Bhagavad Gita, and the last one she wrote, which is Voice of the Silence. The Declaration of ULT is a very profound declaration, as is the Declaration of the United States, to which the countenance of the masters were given, and the pen who wrote those lines were given impulse by them. This lodge tries to promulgate the pure philosophy of the masters, and there are pseudo-theosophists everywhere in the universe, and we do exist side by side. Once that we follow the wrong path, it is extremely difficult to come back to the original, because it means that the student has to develop that capacity of discrimination that can tell the truth from the false. And this takes quite a long time in its assimilation of the Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled, and all the other books. The philosophy is valuable to the world because it enables the followers of this philosophy to embrace moral and ethical living, and making this philosophy come alive in our hearts in its promulgation in the universe, as well as the living that is based upon it makes each one of us representatives of the masters that are in the universe. This is the only way available to the West at this time. It sounds like it is a fairy tale, because the philosophy promulgated in those books are very much different than the scientific, the theological, and philosophical ideas that are presented to the world as the truth. As we know, the hypothesis of science changes, but the three fundamental propositions of this philosophy is not based on guesswork, but rather on the gathering of this information for thousands and thousands of years by the wisdom of truth carriers, and its verification over and over again. What is given to us is a very small amount of that doctrine, but it is enough that it will take us a long time to digest it. This lodge welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes, and who desire to put themselves by study and otherwise to be the better able to help and teach others. The exemplars of this philosophy are the ones that are truly altruistic philanthropists. The reading today comes from the Voice of the Silence, where it is stated, "The path is one disciple, yet in the end twofold. Marked are its stages by 4 and 7 portals. At one end, bliss immediate, and at the other, bliss deferred. Both are of merit the reward. The choice is thine. The one becomes the two, the open and the secret. The first one leads to the goal, the second to self-immolation. When to the permanent is sacrificed the mutable, the prize is thine. The drop returneth whence it came. The open path leads to the changeless change, nirvana, the glorious state of absoluteness, the bliss past human thought. Thus, the first path is liberation, but path the second is renunciation, and therefore called the path of woe. The secret path leads the Arhan to mental woe unspeakable, woe for the living dead, and helpless pity for the men of karmic sorrow. The fruit of karma, sages dare not still. For it is written, teach to eschew all causes, the ripple of effect. As the great tidal wave, thou shalt run its course. The open way, no sooner hast thou reached its goal, will lead thee to reject the bodhisattvic body, and make thee enter the thrice glorious estate, or Dharmanakaya, which is oblivion to the world and men forever. The secret way leads also to paranirvanic bliss, but at the close of kalpas, without number, nirvanas gained and lost from boundless pity and compassion for the world of deluded mortals. But it is said, the last shall be the greatest. Samyak Sambuddha, the teacher of perfection, gave up his self for the salvation of the world by stopping at the threshold of nirvana, the pure state. He who becomes Pratyekapa Buddha makes his obeisance but to his self. The bodhisattva who has won the battle, who holds the prize within his palm, yet says in his divine compassion, for others' sake, this great reward I yield, accomplishes the greater renunciation. A savior of the world is he. Behold, the goal of bliss and the long path of woe are at the furthest end. Thou canst choose either, O aspirant to sorrow, throughout the coming cycles. Om Vajrapani Ham. And now today's talk. Roots of Liberty and the Adepts in America.
Thank you, friends. Today's talk is scheduled in the program to be next week, because week after next is July 4. This student does not see today's talk as just an American talk. This, the student has kind of rechanged the title, Roots of Liberty for the World. And you may see that as the presentation unfolds today. The reason why we had to change it was because we have a student who is doing a series of presentations on Patanjali's yoga aphorisms, who could only do it next week in her series. So anyway, we're not too far ahead of ourselves on the Independence Day talk. We have here a letter from the Bombay Lodge before we get going here. This is sort of a worldwide headquarters for ULT. The national headquarters is in Los Angeles. Dear friends, we send you fraternal greetings and all good wishes on the forthcoming occasion of ULT Day, which was last week, and we did that program here last week. Adepts in America, or Roots of Liberty. The government of the United States was established at a time of extreme dogmatism, as I'm sure all Americans know that. Many came to America for religious freedom, but they were very tenacious of their own particular types of beliefs. So we might assume that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution would contain much about religion. But this is not the case. In searching the Declaration, we do find reference to nature and nature's God. The natural rights of man are specified, such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In appealing to British brethren, the Declaration appeals to their native justice and magnanimity. All reference to religion and Christianity or God's commands are left out. And then in Article 6 of the Constitution, we find that no religious test as a qualification for office shall ever be required, and the First Amendment prohibits an establishment of religion or restraint of free exercise. Mr. Judge noted in 1774, the Adepts influenced Thomas Paine, through the help of Benjamin Franklin, to come to America. Mr. Paine became the main instigator of the separation of the colonies from the British Crown. At the suggestion of Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, and other Freemasons, Paine wrote Common Sense, first published anonymously on January 1, 1776. December 1, 1776. Paine indicated the focus should be on the importance of the content. January 1 is correct. On the importance of the content and not the name of the author. So he initially published it anonymously. His name did get attached to it later on. Common Sense embraced secularism and belief in human perfectibility, and quotes such as, "We have it in our power to begin the world over again. O ye that love mankind, ye that dare oppose not only tyranny, but the tyrant, stand forth." It was our call to arms. George Washington later wrote to Paine, "I shall be exceedingly happy to see you. Your presence may remind Congress of your past services to this country, and if it is in my power to impress them, command my best exertions with freedom, as they will be rendered cheerfully by one who entertains a lively sense of the importance of your works." And again in a letter to Madison, Washington said, "Can nothing be done in our assembly for poor Paine? Must the merits and services of common sense continue to glide down the stream of time unrewarded by this country?" His writings certainly have had a powerful effect upon the public mind. Ought they not then to meet an adequate return? And we'll hear later why Mr. Paine got into this kind of dilemma, which caused lots of Americans, the little big men in Congress and so forth, to get upset with them. In the Age of Reason, we don't have to go very far, this is one that Mr. Paine said, "I saw, or at least I thought I saw, a vast scene opening itself to the world in the affairs of America, and it appeared to me that unless the Americans changed the plan they were then pursuing and declared themselves independent, they would not only involve themselves in a multiplicity of new difficulties, but shut out the prospect that was then offering itself to mankind through their means." Further on he says, "There are two distinct classes of thoughts, those produced by reflection and those that bolt into the mind of their own accord. I have always made it a rule to treat these voluntary visitors with civility, and it is from them I have acquired all the knowledge that I have." Mr. Judge added, that these voluntary visitors were injected into Mr. Paine's brain by the adepts. Seeing that a new order of ages was about to commence, and that there was a new chance for freedom and the brotherhood of man, the adepts laid before the eye of Thomas Paine, who they knew could be trusted to stand almost alone with the lamp of truth in his hand, amidst others who, in times that tried men's souls, quaked with fear. The result was a declaration and the Constitution. The design of the reverse side of the U.S. Great Seal is a pyramid whose capstone is removed with the blazing eye and a triangle over its dazzling sight. You will notice that we don't have paper currency floating around that much. We use a lot of plastic these days, but every now and then we get a dollar bill. If you look at the back of the dollar bill, and there we go, the Great Seal right there, just as is described. Above it, in Latin, are the words, "The heavens prove," on top. While underneath appears the startling sentence, "A new order of the ages." A new order of ages. The design of the seal symbolizes the building and firm founding of a new order of ages. It puts into form the idea which, by means of a voluntary visitor, was presented to the mind of Thomas Paine, of a vast scene opening itself, the beginning in America of a new order of ages. Mr. Judge went on to note that the Theosophical adepts hovered over Washington, Jefferson, and all the other brave Freemasons who dared to found a free government in the West, which could be pure from the dross of dogmatism. They were very brave because had we lost, they probably would have lost their lives. The adepts cleared their minds, inspired their pens, and left upon the great seal of this mighty nation the memorial of their presence. In his Rights of Man, Mr. Paine wrote later, he said, "No beginning could be made in Asia, Africa, or Europe to reform the political condition of man. She," meaning America, "made a stand not for herself alone, but for the world, and looked beyond the advantage she could receive." Mr. Paine also said that the case and circumstances of America present themselves as in the beginning of a world there is a morning of reason rising upon man on the subject of government that has not appeared before. Mr. Paine first published in this country under the title African Slavery in America, March 8, 1775. That was at a time when slavery was common. Even Mr. Washington, Mr. Jefferson, and Mr. Franklin had owned slaves, all of the founders of this great nation. Anyway, he stated in this publication that some desperate wretches should be willing to steal and enslave men by violence and murder for gain is rather lamentable than strange. But that many civilized, nay, Christianized people should approve and be concerned in the savage practice is surprising, and still persists, though it has been so often proved contrary to the light of nature, to every principle of justice and humanity, and even good policy, by a succession of eminent men and several late publications. It's not hard to understand why someone who writes things like that in an environment that existed in the 1770s gets into trouble. But that's what happens when you are a bearer of the truth. It just is. He's got a lot of good company. Just a few weeks later, the first anti-slavery society in America was formed in Philadelphia. Tom Paine was a founding member, and Washington's army was more integrated than any American force up until the Vietnam War. So a few quotes about Mr. Paine from those who should have known. like John Adams. He said, history is to ascribe the American Revolution to Thomas Paine. He also said, without the pen of Paine, the sword of Washington would have been wielded in vain. And I know not whether any man in the world has had more influence on its inhabitants or the affairs of the last 30 years than Tom Paine. Napoleon Bonaparte said, a statue of gold ought to be erected to you in every city in the universe. I assure you, I always sleep with the rights of man under my pillow. I desire you to honor me with your correspondence and advice. Abraham Lincoln, I never tire of reading Tom Paine. Thomas Edison, I consider Paine our greatest political thinker, as we have not advanced and perhaps never shall advance beyond the Declaration and Constitution, so Paine has had no successors who extended his principles. The first drafts of the Declaration of Independence were penned by Jefferson, but the words had already been used by or were strongly influenced by Paine. Paine enlisted as a private in the Army, was made aide-de-camp to General Greene, and took part in various battles. It was December 1776, not January before. December 1776, the first series of Paine's letters on the crisis started with, "These are the times that try men's souls." On Christmas Eve, Washington had it read to the troops at Valley Forge. From then on, the war was won. The sword but followed out the furrows traced by Paine as the war went on. At each point where all seemed engulfed, another of the crisis pamphlets appeared. At each emptied moment, Paine filled once more the cup of courage. Thus the disgraced Paine gave grace to all and spelled the final triumph out of the broken letters of defeat. The Pennsylvania legislature also made Paine about this time, about toward the end of the war, I believe, its clerk. So he was a clerk in Pennsylvania. And then he was also made Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Secretary of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Continental Congress. In 1781, he was sent to France for a loan. He got one. He returned. He organized the Bank of North America to raise money to feed and clothe the army. He lived in France for most of the 1790s. 1791 and 1792, he published Part 1 and Part 2 of The Rights of Man, a defense of the French Revolution. In 1792 in England, he was indicted by the British as an outlaw, but left before his arrest. Just before his arrest. He was sailing out when they were after him in Plymouth. He was elected to the French Assembly, even though he spoke no French. He voted against the death of the king. He got sent to prison there for a year until James Monroe got him released. In 1794, he published The Age of Reason in France. In 1802, President Jefferson offered passage on the ship Maryland, so he would be safe from the British who were still were after him as the chief instigator of the American Revolution. He stayed at Monticello when he came back to the America, and then eventually the state of New York gave him the New Rochelle Farm, and on June 8, 1809, at age 72, his starved and aged frame collapsed, and Thomas Paine was dead. Paine's bones were later exhumed to be sent to the place of his birth, but have now disappeared. So had Paine's ardent world patriotism prevailed over that of the national patriotism of Washington and some others, it is written that we would have been spared the War of 1812 and the Great War of 1914. At that time, Paine was working with France, and he was telling the Americans, look, the French helped you, now it's your turn to help them. So that was the situation then. Thomas Paine's profession of faith, quote, "The world is my country, to do good is my religion." His faith was centered on the belief of a first cause eternally existing and of a universe governed by law. Paine showed from history that the age of ignorance commenced with the Christian system. The expression of such thoughts caused Paine to be called an infidel. Christian writers have claimed that Paine died a drunkard and that on his deathbed he confessed his error in attacking religious dogma. Such lies have long since been disproved, but are still pernicious among us. The absence of the Christian God from the Declaration of Independence and from the Constitution of the United States is due to the influence of Thomas Paine. Religious freedom throughout this broad land, where sects thrive but liberty of conscience still prevails, is due to Thomas Paine. From an American experiment by Mr. Judge, we find that the Theosophical Society was formed with the object of forming a nucleus of universal brotherhood, which is a repetition on the purely moral side of the Declaration. The theosophical experiment of the present century is a product of the soil of America. In her 5 messages to the American Theosophist, HPB said she was proud to be a citizen of the United States and that our karma as Americans, as a nation, had brought theosophy home to us. In the 4th message, written just before her death, she gave us the method by which our country might be saved. Be theosophists, she said. Work for theosophy. Theosophy first, and theosophy last. For its practical realization alone can save the Western world from that selfish and unbrotherly feeling that now divides race from race, one nation from the other, and from that hatred of class or social considerations that are the curse and disgrace of so-called Christian peoples. Theosophy alone can save it from sinking entirely into the mere luxurious materialism in which it will decay and putrefy as civilizations have done. In your hands, brothers and sisters, is placed in trust the welfare of the coming century. And great as is this trust, so great also is the responsibility. And that trust and that responsibility continues to be in our hands, whether or not we have ever heard of the word theosophy. So happy upcoming July 4th to all. Now, for those few who brave the rains here, we're opening the presentation to discussion and questions. Andrew?
Did any of the research show why Thomas Paine, if I understand, went to France, went to England? Why didn't he stay in the Americas?
The question was, why didn't Thomas Paine stay in the Americas? Why did he go to France and then to England? Well, first, Thomas Paine was born in England, so this student understands that he went to England at that time to visit the place of his birth. And he went to France because of the French Revolution, this student understands. And he wanted to help the French because the French had helped the Americans. So he was there, and he made a great impression on the French, and he was voted into the French government, if you will, a group of the French government, even though he didn't speak French. So that's this student's understanding of why he was a citizen of the world. He happened to be asked to come to the United States for the very reason that he lived for, which is the freedom and love of mankind.
We'll give you the microphone.
There you go.
We have to keep it. H.P. Blavatsky, somehow in your last statements, said something about the divisiveness in this part of the Western world, and I think she might have also mentioned throughout the world, was attributed to the Christian community. Is that what she was actually saying? And if she did, what was it that caused that?
It's the same thing with Christianity, I think, as it is with other people who have narrow beliefs. They get to the point where they believe that their way is the only way. It just happened to be that she was talking about Christianity at the time, and anyone who has spent a little bit of time in a conservative Christian environment can relate, I think, directly, if they're thinking, to what HPV was talking about. That this causes a lot of divisiveness, especially when you have a situation where people who profess to believe in God also own slaves. Okay, that's what Tom Paine was he saw that way back then, when I would say 99% of the people didn't. And he was bringing that to the forefront. And HPV got in a lot of trouble, just like Tom Paine did, because she spoke the truth, and she recorded it for us to see if we want to see it. And of course, it's very difficult to get through that sometimes because of our established beliefs and so forth. So it gets parked on the side for a lot of people. They don't pick it up, but those who do and really get interested in it, it's a new world open to them. Like, and some people never recognize the information that's in there. For example, this student likes to talk about Albert Einstein, his theory of relativity. If you look in, it's right in there, and he put it together and called it science. And we are benefiting to this day on a material plane because of the work of Albert Einstein 100 years ago. It said that he was actually the forerunner of the computers we have today. Comment, question?
Comment. With the distinction that HPV never claimed that philosophy to be hers. She said, I'm only the window through which the light comes.
Absolutely.
Meaning that the knowledge was given by the masters of wisdom. She just was the messenger who brought it into the world for the 19th century. She never said, follow me. She always said and says, follow the path I have shown through the master's philosophy.
So is that in effect exactly, and I think you're exactly on point, in effect what Tom Paine said when he first published Common Sense? It's not the person who wrote it that's important. It's what's in there.
It's the message.
It's the message. So
but it's the same principle for Christianity also.
Absolutely.
Because Jesus' sayings, his ethics and morality, comes within the Buddha cycle. And if you compare his statement with that of Buddha, you find out that the Essenes were expressing exactly the same thing. So depending which wisdom mysteries he was initiated into, because he was initiated into 3 of them, one being the Jewish temple mysteries, the second being the Magi, which is the Zoroastrian religion mysteries, because the Magi are representative of their religion, and then to the Egyptian mysteries, because there's a passage in the Secret Doctrine where it says that he was initiated into the mysteries in one of the pyramids, Cheops particularly. So, Jesus of that book is not the same one as the universal Jesus, because that Jesus that HPV talks about is a very profoundly wise initiate who was gathering information or knowledge from different areas in the Middle East and synthesizing them into a whole, finding out that what one said corresponded exactly with what the other one said, and coming to the conclusion that there was only one wisdom religion in the universe, but its different applications of it was given to different societies or humanity in different areas of the universe. For instance, in the Zoroastrian religion, it's Ashoy, purity, that comes first, because because they were very practical people and their religion was suited to them. But the main philosophy is exactly the same as the fundamentals of the philosophy of the masters in the Sikh doctrine. If I needed to go into it, then we can discuss it until tomorrow. However, if you go to Muhammad, he came to the Arabian Peninsula, but his function was a very essential one in the sense that the Arabics of that age preserved the knowledge that was forbidden to the European by the church. So they synthesized it, because when you even now see PBS programs, there's an Arabic scholar, there's a Jewish scholar, and there is a Christian scholar. The three of them working together to decipher what is written, and so that each one can express it in three different languages so that the knowledge is not lost. That is cooperative learning. This is what Arabia did for Europe. It preserved it, and through Cordoba, it rechanneled it again. So it does come, that light comes to different areas at different times, but what is promulgated is the same wisdom religion under a different disguise.
Exactly. So I think what you said is that, you know, individuals who come to as witnesses, and we are all witnesses on the scene. We all have these capabilities of Buddha and Jesus. Every one of us was born with that capability, and we are here as messages for the greater all. And as long as we stick with that, you know, the Jewish, the Christian, or the whatever, the Buddhist, they're all going to say the same thing, you know, just like Jesus and the Buddha did. Okay, but when we start, you know, getting in our personal stuff that our baggage that we carry around with us, that we were born and indoctrinated in up until now, then that truth gets diluted, and that's where we have our problems and our conflicts in the world.
But there is tremendous uplifting young thought going around, because if you look at our society, 11-year-old kids have become wonderful philanthropists. They're on the internet gathering money for African water resources. They're gathering for school supplies for people who do not have it. They are living the life at 11 that we, the students of Theosophy, are trying to promulgate into our own inner selves. These young ones,
they already know.
Representatives of the future, are already here, and there are quite a few of them. There's a violinist, and he was only 3-4 years old. His feet couldn't dangle. His feet was dangling on the stool sitting next to his father, who was a pianist, and taught him the notes. He could not speak it well enough, but he could repeat it well enough on the violin. So there are tremendous minds amongst us today who are truly ethical, moral, and altruistic, and they show it by the living they're doing, and they're very young. So this is very promising for
it certainly is. Yeah.
Really.
And also those young folks that come along, maybe the 11-year-old or whatever might not have recognized this age of materialism, but then there's a case this student heard about, which is very similar, where he was a entrepreneur, and he went down to Brazil, I believe it was, and saw that there was a lot of foot disease among the young children. So he came back and started a company for making shoes, and half of the proceeds from the shoes that he sold went to shoes for those barefooted children in Brazil, and it's made a lot of difference down there. Yeah, there's still problems, but he's made a great deal of difference. So the idea is, we're born into this world. We got to be a bit practical about it. We don't have to, you know, we're in the world. We don't have to be of the world, it's said. But we can take those resources that become available to us and do something good with them.
Well, the advice I think he gave to the world was that if you see a problem, become part of the solution.
Absolutely.
If your soul is attracted to it, then come up with a solution with other souls that are of the same ideology and solve it, rather than saying the next generation can do it. You become part of the solution. Perhaps you all have questions?
I do. Can you just speak a little bit about what adepts are?
Good question. In a word, in a few words, they are perfected beings. Human beings. So they are in this world, and we have them all over. They don't acknowledge that they are there because they get persecuted just like the rest of them. Plus, they don't really come out and say, "I'm perfect." If you hear somebody say that, probably not. But so adepts are perfected beings. They've committed themselves to coming back, even though, and this gets into a little bit of philosophy that I'm going to shortcut a bit. At a certain point in time, the Buddha made a decision. He said, okay, I can just go out and do whatever I do far behind the scenes and not be in the middle of people, helping people, or I can come back. And he had the right to make that decision because he'd become so perfected at the time. He chose to come back and help people. So we had a person in the world who was doing exactly what this student is describing, a perfected individual who is out there trying to help others. And that's essentially what an adept is. You might be able to add to that.
With the addition,
Use the mic, please.
With the addition that they have knowledge as to the workings of the universe, as to the cycles, as to our solar system, and that each human soul is on the same pilgrimage for perfectibility. And this is what religions lack, because they do not make each human soul capable of that becoming perfect. In other words, puts responsibility on the individual. And then, of course, how are we becoming perfect? Can this be achieved in one lifetime? Absolutely not. That is what the Eastern philosophy, karma, action, reaction, and reincarnation, which is the individuality reincarnates, but with a different personality in each life. And that is why we do not remember our previous incarnations.
Not now, anyway.
But this is a very difficult philosophy for the Western world, whereas the Eastern people are all enmeshed in it, because they are born into it, they are raised in it, it's part of our nature. Our sons and daughters who were brought up in this philosophy also promulgate that same ideology. But my son tells me, Mom, when I'm in a gathering, I'm the only one who can say karma and reincarnation is a fact of life, but the other people look at me with unbelieving eyes, because they were never, ever introduced into it. So this is the Western karma through Christianity. It came about, that vicarious atonement, that we're forgiven. Nature does not forgive, it enables you to correct your mistake, it gives you another chance. But there is no such thing as forgiveness for wickedness. It's just that the soul is not at that point where it identifies with all of the other souls and accepts it as part of itself. And this is what karma and reincarnation does. Would you hurt someone if you knew that they were part of you? Because there is that interconnectedness to the universe, as well as all those beings that live in it. We're all interconnected. Humanity is one family. So to make others understand and see that fact is the theosophical task. And that is why HPV said the Western world rests on our shoulders, because it is a tremendous responsibility. We were given this opportunity, but we also have the responsibility to make it widely known in the universe, in our universe, so that people can make that choice for themselves with knowledge. Does that help?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you got the whole gist, but the whole idea is, in this philosophy, you have to learn it intellectually, and to do that, you've got to study the entire life. You've also got to be able to put it in practice, not only just understanding it theoretically. I mean, I really have a great admiration for those who can come up and stand and talk to you about this without notes, just talk about it. I mean, that's wonderful to be able to do it. But that's part of the process, and you also learn to live it. Once you learn to live the life, one person at a time, you change the world. It takes, you don't have to think, you can't think of it in time and space and all that stuff, all these artificial measurements that we invent. It will happen, and if we look at the long-term view over time, the ages as we're talking about, you can see that pattern, that we change the world, Plato and others, one person at a time. And we're each one of us is one of those people.
Yeah, we can make a difference in the universe. We just have to come to the decision that I want to be counted and stand up, because we're self-chosen and we choose ourselves. But there is a very simple book written by Mr. Crosby, Universal Theosophy. Which one is it?
Is it this one? There you go.
Is there another version of it, or is this the only version of it?
Use that one. We've got two of them, I believe. We may have others somewhere.
If you think this is useful to you in your studies, I will gift you one if you wish to read it.
Yeah, that just kind of gets you on the way. And
it is universal, it is non-offensive, but it puts all of the philosophy in a very simple manner. The first time I read it, I thought, wow, what exactly did he say? So I went and reread it. He says a lot, but it's in a very simple tone. So
some people take offense, for example, Christianity, what HPB says about it, but she gets at everybody. She gets at the Catholics. She gets at the Jews. She just says it the way it is, you know.
She's not after anyone.
And virtually, if you look at it, if you analyze it, what she's talking about is what we, the people, have injected into the process. It's not a law of nature that's in there. It's what we did to ourselves and to our future that's there. I mean, that's part of the karma process.
Yeah, because the Master has a statement somewhere that if we were to truly follow Jesus' sayings, our universe should be a golden age. Because what he gave out, if we live it, make it practical, is making our universe a golden age. But to have it as commandment and not follow it, not make it part of your life, then what is its value?
And you're getting a crash course now that you asked the question.
Well,
I wanted to
places and give talks at the universities and places.
Yeah. One thing I would like to add to that, if I still remember what I was trying to say earlier, was that is that we have to learn it, we have to live it, and it's up to us as individuals to assimilate this in the way that we find best for us. But what stands in the way, and this is a training ground. When we're in this life, the philosophy says, this is where we learn. And then we leave this life, we assimilate what we learned, and we come back. And while we're in this life, that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where we learn, that's where we help and teach others, and all of these things in the philosophy. How that fit in, I have to remember. But anyway, we have a couple more minutes if somebody has another question or. Andra.
Given the stricture of the religion of the day, when Tom Paine and everyone, they're writing the Constitution, they're writing the Bill of Rights, all of that, I'm just wondering how Thomas Paine was able to get over to this grouping of people in that era of stricture, in that era of religious tradition. How in the world he was able to get over that openness of allowing religious freedom?
That's why he's called a messenger of the adepts sometimes, because it's a very restrictive environment was in Europe at that time, in England too, and he saw that, and he got in trouble over there, and the English were after him too, because he saw things that he didn't that were really getting in the way of freedom. And he met Ben Franklin. Now, we don't have a lot of information, or this student didn't see anyway, all the details behind what took place between him and Ben in England when Ben Franklin went over there. But when he was convinced to come to America by Ben Franklin sent him, because I think Ben stayed in England for a while, sent him with letters of introduction to various people with influence in this country in Philadelphia. So he, that's how he got introduced. Ben Franklin was talking to him, and I think this student might know something that...
One of those influential people was his son-in-law, who was the editor of the newspaper in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's what this student has in mind, but thank you for bringing it out, and I don't have to say it. So he introduced him to his brother-in-law? Son-in-law. And he became an editor of that paper, and that's where he published his first thing on slavery in America. It's one of the first things he saw when he came here. Probably already knew before he came. But that's the message here, that some people like him forming this nation saw that, hey, here's an opportunity to move forward this idea of liberty in the world. And America was a fertile ground at that time, and no place else in the world that Tom Paine saw was able to do that. So that's why he came here.
He was convinced to come.
He was convinced to come. Yes. I don't know. Ben might have twisted his arm. I don't know what he did. Yeah.
Did HPB ever speak about the thread of evolvement that occurs in this part of the world as different religions surface, and there may be prejudice against them, and then there's prejudice against another religion, and then there's prejudice against another religion? Did she ever talk about that type of thing happening as different peoples become assimilated here and in this part of the world?
Not in those terms, but she lived it. She was fought as much as anyone because people saw that her thinking was way beyond any one particular group of invented beliefs that man has come up with that do not comply with the laws of nature. She was in compliance with the laws of nature. So was Tom Paine. So was Buddha. So was Jesus. I'm not trying to classify all of them as perfected beings, for goodness sakes. But these folks, especially like Tom Paine, it's on record that maybe he did some things that conventional law doesn't appreciate. But he was in line with the worldview of laws of nature and so forth, and he sort of ignored them. That's one reason why he got in trouble. He got thrown out of the Congress or something, this student understands, because he stood up and said this person is committing fraud, and we should now be helping France because France helped us. France is now in this struggle for freedom too. Let's spread this freedom idea along. And we said, oh no, we just got over a war. We're not going to go help France. So that got him in trouble. And things like that. So typically when you have a bearer of the truth, someone who is breaking the mold, you're going to find that. And HPV in effect lived what you're talking about, trying to get people to assimilate and come together.
The main purpose of the wisdom philosophy is that it wants to show humanity that they are all one community, that regardless of where we live, regardless of what religion we follow, we're all brothers and sisters because we come from that same essence, which is the first fundamental position of the secret doctrine, that there's only one unity in the universe, and there's only one essence, the spiritual essence. So our soul nature comes from that one essence. And the question is then, how different can we possibly be if we originate from that one spiritual essence? If my soul, your soul, their soul is of the same nature, of the same essence, the spiritual essence, then where's the difference? Where is it coming from? It is the persona, the personality. We look at each other and we identify with our physical bodies. But what is inherent inside it is that the spiritual essence, and that's the first fundamental proposition. So when she says universal brotherhood, what is that based on? That same unity that we originate from. So it is a fact in nature, but we don't exhibit it through ourselves. We look at ourselves different from one another. And we look at other nations as different from one another. If the universe works under strict justice and we're all the same, then the same strict law applies everywhere. It's not just here or there, it's everywhere. But how do you bring that unification about? What are we going to base it on? Ideology. So she gave the universal ideology. Her main aim when she was on this earth was to form a nucleus of brotherhood, and for that one nucleus to become nuclei in all different parts of the universe, where like-minded individuals would be pulled in, and this noble effort then inherently attracting higher influences to itself would then influence from itself outward and affect all the minds around it. And so that as these centers grew together in unification, then whole humanity would become one. I mean, they are looking thousands and thousands of years ahead because their ideology is based on that pure form of unity. And the Tibetans, exactly the same. The Dalai Lama is now communicating with the West a lot. He comes here quite a bit because she did say that the West and the East have to come together in a unified manner, and that we have to help them overcome superstition, and they have to help us bring about the spirituality in the West, because apparently their representatives are everywhere. Kabbalists, mystics, we just don't know who they are, but they're around. And this student noticed that the Dalai Lama comes with frequency now to the West.
This student is seeing it as and this is purely this student's view, a top-down approach versus the bottom-up approach. We are so involved in the details of this life. 999 million chances out of whatever to give billion, we use the bottom-up approach. We get involved in all this activity, dum-de-dum-de-dum around us, okay, and we lose sight of the big picture, which is we are here to help and teach, which is what their philosophy says, that we are here for the emancipation of the soul, to gain experience, etc., so that we ourselves have the opportunity to become the Buddhas and the Christ of this world. And we forget about all that, and we get all involved around in this materialism stuff. Rather than using materialism for this end, we get sidetracked. And it's easy to do that when we get involved, and that's my hat's off to those who try to go around and bring these various religious groups together, because it's very difficult to do that and not get sucked up into the personalities of the process, which they want all the teachers warn against, and we are very personality oriented. We are very materialistic oriented. We're very much oriented in all of those ways, which we have talks about, and this is trying to throw it together in about 1 minute. All of these things that are in front of us to give us the opportunity to learn, and rather than learning, we just get sucked up in it. Yeah, we learn a little bit by getting sucked up in it, but that's kind of it. All right. We're getting close to the end. One more question. No.
I don't know if this is a question or a comment, and we'll see what happens. But if we take the concept of reincarnation as truth, it implies development and evolvement of soul, from unconsciousness to being more conscious, to be aware, and eventually to really be aware that we are all one and we are from that same essence. But as we navigate through life, we are working with souls that are at different levels of that incarnation. And there has to be some type of, I'll call it forgiveness, or understanding or acknowledgement that they are learning different things in the world that maybe we're not. There are souls that have, let's say, evolved to the level that they can use that of God within them, that of the higher source, that of the all, and manifest it in terms of altruism. And this has come from many lives of experience. And so that's where we see the difficulty, of trying to transmit that truth or that consciousness of helping others when they're still working on self, and they're sort of, as you said, caught up in this world of Maya. And that is a stage of existence that hopefully they will grow beyond in coming lifetimes. And so does HPB talk about acknowledging, I don't know how to say with love, the different levels of people that are in existence now, the world as it is. We are to help the world become a better place for our having lived in it. And at the same time, there has to be a respect and an awe for the design of how things are in terms of evolvement, in terms of different parts of the world presenting different situations to be overcome that are perfect for that particular soul in that particular lifetime.
The short answer is absolutely. But we got to learn how to do it. Each individual does. And, it's all in the communications. It's all in understanding where we are, and we are all at different places in our development. Some of us in the Stone Age, while others of us in the Golden Age, all at the same time, although we are generally considered to be in the age of Kali Yuga, which is the Iron Age, which is all this materialism going on around us, which gives us even more opportunity than the Golden Age to make a difference. So yeah, I forget everything you just said, but it sounded good. But the bottom line is, that's what HPV wrote all this stuff about, is love and all that, and trying to tell us that, hey, we are our brother's keeper, although we should not be, it's fraught with danger to try to take on the karma of another. We are here to help. Every one of us is here to help. And if we're not helping, we're not doing our job. And also we're here to learn, to advance to that golden age.
If we are all united, and we are all united, whether we recommended to sit in meditation, to withdraw inward, to see what your soul nature is, which is not, I think it is catching up, the West is catching up. But there's a statement where they said all of the Tibetans are poor, but that land is a sacred land, and the lamissaries feed everybody. There is no differentiation, you can go and be fed. But in the West, look at the change that has come about with our government, for instance. We cannot close our eyes to what's going on around us. We have an honest president that looks real. What has happened to Congress? We saw the battle going on. Are they working for the people? Is this a government by the people, for the people, from this declaration that we talked about today.
This is an ideal. This is not what's happening necessarily.
What we are changing everything is what, and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is supposed to work for the United States people, but they're being bought and sold just like anything else because they have now made corporations persons. So our government is being bought and sold by the corporations, but humanity on the western side of the world needs to understand, we need to become intelligent as to what is going on, because this is not that declaration in existence today anymore, because everything around us is being changed. And now, do you know that there is a movement saying that the declaration is 200 years old and does not fulfill our needs today, and they want to change all of it? Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, the
So
majority,
we are going to sink.
you're not looking at what the majority of Theosophists here. You go out in the world and you're going to find, hey, let's change this and let's just change. This student sees, growing up in a church, this student sees at least the ULT version of Theosophy is one which doesn't change because it's representing the laws of nature as time goes by. And it's solid. You know, every other year somebody in the church or in the other theosophical groups is trying to change something. Well, if it's fundamental, if we're here to try to help and teach, what do we change from one year to the next? You know, maybe keeping up with the times, and that's all. And it's the same thing that went on in the 1800s is going on now. We need to try to help and teach.
To each one of us, our soul nature is, our spirit is changeless because that essence is changeless. It's at the core of each human
Exactly.
being. If that wasn't there, you would not be able to perceive change, either in yourself or around you. There's something changeless in us, and that philosophy represents that changeless.
Now you're getting into real science.
In conjunction, well, I am a scientist, in conjunction with nature's laws, because the nature's law is based on strict justice, and universal justice is what we're talking about.
Whether we
here.
see it or not.
But if our justice system does not follow the original, which was brought about by the Freemasons, for
It'll
our
get swept away.
forefathers were all Freemasons, they understood the philosophy, maybe not metaphysics, but its practical application of it. But anyway, we need to be very, very aware of what's going on around us, because one of Mr. Judge's articles says that the United States has lived the Roman Empire that was 2,000 years in 200 years, that we are going to truly sink, because the government in Rome rotted from inside out. In other words, they became very corrupt. Well, the same thing I think is happening to us here.
But
Does
but
HPB speak to that? Does she touch upon that kind of information about the rise and the fall of civilizations?
well, she clearly spoke to that in her last quote that was read about.
Close it and
Let's close it. Absolutely, because
we need to
she.
be somewhere else.
I
We
mean,
need to finish the conversation.
let me just finish the conversation by saying
And we'll answer
that
your question.
what happens to us in America depends on us. It does not depend on the corporation. It does not depend on the government.
It depends on the
Thank
people.
you. Let's call it quits for today. Next week is.